Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Haley McNamara. Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us today. I am thrilled to be speaking with Tim Estes. He's an executive. He's an expert in artificial intelligence, natural language processing, online safety legislation like the Kids Online Safety Act that so many of you are familiar with. And he is the CEO and founder of AngelQ, which is creating a safer internet for families using AI. Hi, Tim. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Haley.
We're so excited about all of the positive things that you've been working on. So often working in this advocacy space, our podcasts can get a little grim. And so it's nice to have good news to talk about, especially in the AI space. But unfortunately, as the news cycle would have it, just over the weekend, some wild news broke about that darker side of the technology world. So before we get into the light and the positive things coming down the line, I was hoping to get your perspective on this Wall Street Journal article, which can be pulled up on the screen for those watching us on YouTube. This article came out over the weekend with some really disturbing revelations about the Meta AI bot. You've read this article. What's your take on it? And in your words, what would you say happened?
Well, I mean, so we've seen this phenomenon playing out between Character AI and Replica and some other companies. And essentially what people did is they took the safeties off of the AI models that are underneath these things. And they they basically told them to method act so that these AIs think that they are this thing in order to create a more human-like, engagement experience. And it sounds like from the article that Meta, all the way up to the CEO, up to Mark, saw these other companies were essentially leaning in and getting ahead of them on that human-like engagement capability. And they were going to be second to none. So they ripped the safeties off. And now they've got, John Cena seducing 14-year-olds. Right? Which I'm sure he's super happy about. And my hope is that the celebrities who licensed, their likenesses, with probably being sworn up and down this would never happen, I hope they litigate. I hope they actually come after them like ruthlessly and make it an issue, because, I don't think any of those people who gave away their likenesses for this intended something like this to happen. So I think what we're seeing here is the unbridled pursuit of engagement, which is basically just the unbridled pursuit of money, because that's how they make their money. There is apparently no new frontier they will not exploit to try to do that. And until something holds them accountable, the courts, the Congress, this behavior will persist. And in an era where things like AI safety is being turned into like regulator related kind of conversations, if we're going to have a functioning healthy market, if we're going to make America healthy again on the mental health side and make our kids safe again, like this has to have consequences, right? And so that's the root issue. Is there's with no liability there'll be no limits, and this is like Exhibit 5081. And no limits from this company.
Absolutely. And like you said, just those safety measures being taken off just to favor engagement. There's one quote from the article here I have that kind of summarizes what happened, which was these test conversations done by the Wall Street Journal found that Meta's official AI helper, called Meta AI, had a vast array of chatbots willing to engage in and sometimes escalate discussions that were decidedly sexual. And even with underage users or bots that were programmed to simulate the personas of minors. So what this ended up happening was these chatbots were having very sexually explicit conversations and like role play sexual scenarios with essentially minors online.
It's just a travesty that one of the greatest breakthrough technologies of the last 20 years is being turned into basically an online 900 number, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what they've done with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wonder
exactly.
how
And
like Facebook AI and Jan LeCun, who runs that, feels about this kind of thing. That part of his legacy is going to be making the 900 number of AI bots.
especially coming from a company like Meta, because we've all seen different versions of this, from kind of nefarious looking, spammy looking AI apps, girlfriend apps that will pop up in the Apple Store and Google Play. But the fact that this is also happening on Meta, which is supposed to be, one would assume, what a global brand. Surely if any of these other AI apps are doing anything for safety, Meta would be at the top of that. So to me too, it's very interesting, because I think if Meta has such poor safety controls around how their AI bots are interacting with children, how much worse is it with these smaller companies that have even less spotlight, even less accountability in the public sphere?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think that Meta is one of the biggest companies, so they're going to get the scrutiny to your point. But it's actually the next wave of companies. Character AI is a good example.
Mm,
Was back with over $100 million. It was basically spun out of Google partially because I think they were scared of some of the possible consequences of what that research could do, but they wanted it to kind of thrive independent. And then of course they've kind of bought it back now. But they there were smaller outfits that were already pioneering this approach, essentially using the human-like dialogue capabilities of these generative AIs to drive a deeper connection, a emotional dependence
mm,
on these systems, and then escalating that and escalating it by design. So, it's about a year and change ago, I wrote an article, or roughly a year ago, in Newsweek about how if you know AI, or if how social networks, that they were basically a digital narcotic now, that AI blended with that's going to turn into the new fentanyl. And
mm.
this feels like exactly that. This is them experimenting with recombinating this new thing they have to get more addicted people. And yeah, it's just at the root of it is the business model, and the root of it is them aligning to treat. I mean, at the end of the day, if you just strip it all away, they're treating the users, especially the kids, as a means to their end,
Mm,
and that's what
mhm.
exploitation is. Exploitation is the treating of another human being not as something deserving of honoring and cherishing and other things, but actually treating the other human being as a means to your end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what something that really struck me about what you just shared was that term experimenting, like just really experimenting,
Mm-hmm.
and with engagement as the ultimate goal. And it's so interesting because I think there's obviously so much experimentation for good to be had in the AI space, but there's also this almost I want to say, like, willing ignorance about the fact that there could be risks or harms. I don't know if you saw, a Meta spokesperson responded to the Wall Street Journal, and in the article is quoted saying, "Oh, the use case of this product, it's this is so fringe." He's saying the way that they tested our bot and found that it was willing to engage in all these sexual conversations with minors, including, I mean, submissive schoolgirl scenarios. I mean, really egregious stuff, some that the Wall Street Journal wouldn't even publish. And they said,
Publisher. Yeah.
this is fringe and it's hypothetical, is what the Meta spokesperson said, which I just found so disingenuous, because of course young teens would engage with an AI bot. I mean, and adults as well, asking questions around sexual scenarios. And it seems almost intentionally obtuse to pretend like that wouldn't happen on your platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's the criminal blaming the police officer. I mean,
Mm,
it's just there literally is no shame here. I mean, one of the ironies of this is, if it's so fringe, why could you never pull this off on OpenAI or Anthropic?
yes.
Why in other leading companies would this never be possible? And people have tried. Why do these
Mm,
companies actually have less resources than Meta, despite them having billions of dollars? They don't have the $1 trillion resources that Meta has. Like, how is it that they managed to not have this problem?
and
And
it's
they've
foreseeable.
never had the problem in the recent era. Why they actually seem to care about the perception of this stuff And Meta seems to think they can put some flack out that points a finger at the investigative journalist as the bad guy here, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's. I guess once again, if you needed any more exhibit parents about why your kids should not go within 500 miles of these things, this is yet another example.
Yes, exactly, exactly, and like you said, it's these harms are foreseeable. This company has so much, so many resources, and it's crazy. I think sometimes with AI tools, there's almost this idea of like we're cavemen discovering fire for the first time, which we are in some ways, but we've had the internet for a long amount of time. We've had social media. We're not complete novices to what foreseeable risks could be. And
Mhm.
so, we aren't cavemen discovering fire for the first time who have no idea of the risks that the house could burn down. Like we are building houses in 2025 and still basically refusing to install smoke detectors, it feels like,
Mhm.
the way that
Mhm.
some of these companies are handling it.
I mean, I'd go further. I'd say that they're still painting the walls with lead.
Mm,
You know, like they know what it does, and they just care they make the lead paint brighter so the kids stay in the room longer, despite making them sick.
yes. Yeah, this is such a disturbing case, and it really I am glad that it leads us in some ways to what you have been working on so diligently, because it's just clear that the internet was not built with kids in mind, and it continues to not be built with kids in mind. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to really get fearful, I think, about AI technology in general. So I'm glad to have some positive news in this space, and that's really where
Mm-hmm.
you and AngelQ came in. I would love to just hear from you about what this is, and also I'd love to just know some about how you came to this. What led you to realize that
Mm-hmm.
something better needed to be built?
So, Angel Q is essentially a way to replace search for younger kids online using AI. And we figured out if you could replace the pattern of searching, like asking questions, which is what the future of search is, it isn't going to be keywords. It's going to be talking to like Siri and Alexa, which is what most of us see our kids
Mm,
do as their first onboarding technology is they ask these devices questions because now they can do that. But what's going to happen is kids are not going to learn to keyword search. They're not going to have to be on Google the way they are now. And if you could intercept that, intermediate that, you could actually, control the kinds of content coming back to be age appropriate. And even more powerfully, you could take content that wasn't designed for children, and if it's way outside the bounds, you can make sure to obviously block and intercept it. But there's a lot of stuff that's fine, but just way too complex, and it's not written for them.
mm.
And it turns out the new capabilities in AI allow you to translate the way something is written to be age appropriate on the fly. And that's a new thing. Just like it's only been recently true that you could have one of these AIs translate between English and Chinese and human level quality in real time. Like that was a miracle 6, 7 years ago, and now it's
Mhm.
commonplace. And so what we said is, well, why can't we translate the internet to 8-year-old girl, and one where the parents can put certain kind of guardrails and guidance around what that is. Um, and what we find is that these kids love asking questions of Angel and being curious. And now their curiosity doesn't come with great risk. Their
Mm.
curiosity is part of their growing up. And so we built this mainly as a way to give the power of AI this sort of browser replacement. So we thought about, okay, where does this live in the ecosystem? This lives in the ecosystem by your kids have an iPad or your family has an iPad and the kids can use it occasionally, and you just take Safari off and you put Angel on, and now you can ask questions and do research and also connect up to streaming. So it connects into
Oh,
YouTube, it
wow.
filters those videos, it connects into Disney Plus and Netflix, and allows the parents to screen a lot of what's coming through there at a much deeper and richer level than is possible in those applications. So this really is this sort of AI agent manifesting as a pretty kind of browser interface for that child, where the way they interact with it is they press that little talk button and they can ask questions and they can ask for videos. um, and so we built out that so that it would do three things for the kids. It would be like the true safe kind of chat GPT for those kids.
Mhm.
And safe is not just, oh, it doesn't put out inappropriate stuff like these chatbots. Safe
Right.
is also, we're not trying to keep them engaged by hooking them by multiple things. In fact, the key
Mm.
part about AngelQ is we're a subscription business. We do not have any advertising. We do not leverage the data to any third parties. We have aligned our business directly with the parents, where we are a tool
Mm.
creator and provider for them and for their kids. We're crafting something that's like owned by that family, and we are the ones keeping it up to date. We're the ones adding new technology and capability. We're not trying to create another environment for kids to basically find their identities and live in, which is what's gone wrong with the internet. Is
Mhm.
it went from being a tool to being a place. And
Mm.
when it became a place and the people that own that place could monetize attention, they started exploiting all those children living in that place. And they're still doing it today. And they're doing it with things like AI chatbots now.
Yes.
So for us, we're basically turning that upside down. We're sitting as an
It's a
intermediary
completely
that's trying
different
to,
business model. Mhm.
yeah, the business model is completely aligned, ethical, and is something
Mhm.
that has all the right incentives. So, for instance, we notice the average amount of time that kids are using Angel is probably 20 to 30 minutes. And they get a bunch of questions answered. They might watch one video. It's essentially this sort of like minimum dose of what's useful to them. And we're reinforcing behaviors like a video plays and it doesn't go anywhere. There's no autoplay. There's no recommended what to do
Mm.
next kind of things, because we actually want the kid to be intentional with technology. These current solutions have been attentional, and they've been focused on addicting kids to get their attention and sell it. You know, in other environments like what Nkosi leads on, when we take human beings, especially minors, and we slice up their time and sell to the highest bidder, we call it exploitation.
Mhm.
And so the digital exploitation vendors that are a lot of these apps, frankly, we're doing the precise opposite. And not only are we like operating differently, we're encouraging the building of resilient behaviors where kids feel like, I don't necessarily want to watch anything else. They get used to turning it off. They get
Yeah.
used to having boundaries. So if you design an app which has natural stopping functions, whereas another app has unlimited scroll,
Mhm.
like you see different things reinforced. So I think that one of the challenges we have, and being like a huge fan of John Haidt and a lot of the people that are pushing, this sort of far more intentional screen model, being a fan of taking the phones out of schools and all the other kind of proposals
Mhm.
that are in flight, um, and working with this group and others to see that happen under law, uh, that there is a risk that we go so far that we say all technology is bad, and we end up
Mhm.
sort of sheltering kids and not making them resilient at all to this huge new world. And so Angel Q was about, okay, we're going to put an AI between every child on the internet that's owned by the parents. Okay. And that vision, now with an implementation, that vision is one that allows us to bring parenting online. It allows us to actually have our own like horse in this race instead of quitting the race. Because if you
Yes.
quit the race, the challenge is eventually those kids, whether they're 16 or they're 18 or they're 14, they're going to encounter technology and they're going to be woefully underprepared. And we want strong, resilient children with deep bonds with their family. So Angel will send insights every week to the parent about what's been asked around, what's been talked about, what's been asked, and gives the interests of that child as they evolve to the parent. Yeah, this Angel insights capability. And so we've actually had numerous parents come back to say, I didn't know this about my kid. Like I didn't know they had this insecurity, like they weren't feeling smart.
Mm.
One parent
Mhm.
like picked up the phone and called their kid as soon as they knew. So this has had an older kid, so I guess they had a phone. And the parent picked up and called the kid and said, "You are smart," and
Oh
try
my
to
goodness.
could be there for them in that moment.
Yes.
And then we find other interests that, oh, I didn't know that, and they decide to take them to the zoo to see an animal. They had no idea they were all obsessed with some animal. And so those are the kind of things that with kids, those of us that have them, I've got a couple myself, their interests are changing almost by the day.
Mm.
They're changing all the time, and it's hard to keep up with, even if you're having that check-in conversation every day, every couple of days, because they're not always going to just tell you. Sometimes they're going to be busy, they're going to think something else, but they do tend to come to these tools and feel unjudged and feel able to interact with them. And there's an enormous signal there that can be harnessed by the parents to build deeper ties in the family and to do tech together, where
Yes.
they ask questions and they explore questions together and go on journeys around. Okay, what animal should we go adopt? And then what's the difference of this animal and that animal, and what do I have to be prepared for? And the kinds of knowledge that, as a parent, we might know some of it. We don't normally know all of it, and we have to go get a little bit of help here and there on that.
Mm.
Um, Now with an AngelQ, we can kind of go through that journey together. It also teaches our kids to not feel like they can't be open and honest with their questions, that they can't be open and honest, that they don't know something, right? Because
Mhm,
here we are as
mhm.
parents, and if we don't know something and we're willing to go ask for help or a question, then it teaches them to be ready to do
Yes.
that. So those are all just different factors. So in some ways, if I was going to sum this up, we live in a world where most of the apps that kids encounter, especially as they get toward 10 and older, they are built with dark patterns to exploit them.
Mhm.
We have imbued light patterns into everything we can think of in AngelQ, and we are listening to the parents constantly to think up more. So, thoughtful stopping moments, thoughtful, like fine grained filtering of videos, like how much violence is in videos, how much sexuality, and having 25,000 videos that have been screened on Netflix and Disney Plus for PG-14 and below coming through Angel and able to set which ones get through and which ones don't super easily. Those are the kind of things that we know solve a major problem of overexposure. It solves a huge frustration, fear of the parent not being able to kind of have that kind of control and granularity. And for the kid, um, it actually opens up a little more of the world to them, because now in a
Mm.
household that's being responsible, um, they can still use a device. They don't have to be just sitting alongside of the parent all the time. Um,
Mhm.
they can feel like they've got some of their own space.
To me, I've got 2 very young children. They're probably not quite here, but one of them's maybe 2 years away from being
Yeah.
really interested in this kind of a tool, and I can't tell you, just as a parent, thank you so much, because it is a relief. I think so many parents feel that tension of wanting their kid to be able to engage online in some way. Like you said, I mean, if a child never sees social media or a Google search bar until they're 18 years old, they have like almost no inoculation to all of the harms, or even, there's so many problems that can come from that. But this gives just like a nice on ramp for
Mm-hmm.
use in a way that feels very responsible and safe. I think so often parents will say, well, I put my safe search on my Google Chrome, so it's fine to just put my kid in front of that Google Chrome. And it's
Yeah.
better to turn on safe search than not, but that's not enough, right?
No, no,
Still,
it's yeah, it's a Russian roulette exercise in nearly all these things, and you almost need a super powerful AI to think through all the stuff that can get to them. It's not
yes.
just a matter of, like, one of the challenges with other tools that have tried to go and be more like smart firewalls, even the very best, and there's some wonderful tools out there, so I'm not here to speak ill of any of that, but one of the challenges is they're constantly having to extend their products to understand new kinds of data sources and to kind of deal with the ever-changing availability. For instance, a good example is I recently wrote about how it came to light that Meta was trying to disrupt Bark monitoring them,
Mm,
and that and I came like out because I thought that we need to fight for Bark. We need to make sure
yeah.
that regulators know, that the FCC knows, because I think Meta's on the
Mhm,
wrong side of the law in this. Not with the new law, like today, I think they're on the wrong side of the law
mhm.
when it comes to precedents around filtering tools and safety, and what they're looking to do to Bark. But I part of the challenge is, like, Bark is constantly having to go invest in that. That's why it's a thoughtful company. It's a great service. But that's their challenge. We think there's a different way to solve part of that, maybe more for younger kids and the teenagers, where I think they excel, which is get an AI in front of all that content to understand
Yes.
it, to
Yeah.
actually like make a decision around it, and to reword it. And so my belief is that that recipe for like 10 and below is really, really solid.
Mhm.
And it creates a healthy, natural connection, uh, of the family exploring and understanding what technology can do as an augmentation. And so what I would say is that we think AngelQ can have an amazing impact, but the thing I'd have to ask for, to this audience and the others, is we need to be partner with the parents.
Mhm.
So Angel should be the thing a parent can says yes to. That it's good for the child. It's going to be time bound. There's, like I said, there's no engine there to drive more time utilization, and that's it's a little bit like training. Like you have to have a commitment
Mhm.
to kind of have kids by default start going that way and not being overexposed to things that are like extremely engaging, extremely addictive. Because what will happen is those other things alongside of Angel, if they give them too much time, they're going to wire their brains to actually need that to feel stimulated, to feel there. And it's going to make our job actually a lot harder and the parents' job a
Yeah.
lot harder. So we're very much in this together. For this to work amazingly, it's let's teach our kids to go through an AI that's on their side really early
Mhm.
for a lot of their exploration. We're dealing with search now. We will think of a way to maybe make social somewhat mediated later. And I really look forward to that. We're going to have a lot of fun with those guys when the tech is there. Um, Imagine a social media world that you can never guarantee that the eyeballs are actually humans anymore and what that does to those
Yeah.
companies. So I can foresee this coming, and I think they can too,
Mm.
which is why they're trying to addict you now.
Yeah.
Because pretty soon, no one's going to accept a direct connection from us to these services because all of them have been abusing our time in the process.
Mhm.
They've either been ineffective in abusing our time or they're exploitive in getting our brains to behave differently to use time that's wasteful. Um, we're going to wake up from that. And we're going to wake up
Yes.
from that. And AI will enable that for us as adults. And what I'm saying is, parents, we can do that for our kids now. We can get them started the right way. We can
Mhm.
grow with them, and like I said, what we will do is, I think, change the very way this generation, this Gen Alpha, looks at technology as a tool again, and something to
Mhm.
be a way to understand themselves better, understand the world better, and then to bring the family together. It is, the technology is not a savior in this. The family is. The technology should serve the family, though. Like, just because so much of the technology today is bad doesn't mean that we are forced out in the cold without our own horse in the race. Angel Q is one of hopefully those few good horses in the race. I hope there's a lot more coming, but we built this one so that families would have an option and an unfair fight, which is these giant AIs inside these large apps trying to gather your children's attention and making them increasingly unable to detach themselves because of that addiction. We believe we now have a way that will turn that direction and take them down a much healthier path.
And it seems so liberating. The idea, how sad is it that the idea of technology being a tool instead of, like you had said, a place, or even for so many, an extension of their identity, I feel like, is
Yeah.
so much of how people are interacting with online platforms now. And for it to just go back to being a tool that you use and then you log off, that's such a better
Yeah.
world, especially for children, and I think it's so interesting too. I think on the AngelQ website, you talk about that you're blending the freedom to explore along with the principle of safety first, which I think is so
Hmm.
fascinating too, because I think it exposes this false dichotomy that a lot of technology companies put out. Even in, at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, I've had many times where I'm in the room with a TikTok, an Instagram,
Hmm.
a Google Chromebooks, and they're saying, well, if we prioritize safety, we would be reducing children's freedom to explore, to learn, to engage with the online space. And they make it seem like it's an either or. And it's just
Hmm.
so refreshing to see that it doesn't have to be an either or choice.
It doesn't, and it was always a canard. It was always a lie that they told us
Mm.
that it had to be. And what's interesting is it's not even true of the broader industry. I mean, let me give you one of the greatest kids technology companies in the past 40 years, Nintendo. And Nintendo has, been at the forefront of making sure there's verification of a kid's age, that there's verification of parental consent when they're engaging in certain areas, and this goes back over a decade.
Mm.
And we once essentially connected gaming started to happen. Now, like, are they perfect or others are? I mean, who knows if like they're perfect? But the company, its intent was to make sure they abided by the law, like COPA, that
Mhm.
they thought through the possible implications, and the content they were putting forward for the most part is nowhere near the extremes that show up on these social networks and online in general,
Yeah.
right? Like there might be some
Yeah.
pretty edgy games out there, but when you think about the level of horrific things that are on the fringes, and Nkosi, I know, is fighting in the front lines of that all the time, trying to like shut down various sites or force age verification so that those sites
Yeah.
have to keep children off. Like that type of work. I mean, the risk is so much higher, and these people did almost nothing. It's like an honor system.
Mhm.
Like, oh, well, tell us your spoken age, and they know. Like they literally have like Finsta, like fake Instagram accounts out there that they know it's a modality to avoid this kind of stuff, and they let it
Yeah.
go on. And so, yeah, I do believe we have been conditioned a little bit to thinking we have to choose between technology and what it can do for us and safety. And
Yes.
that's not true. Like, that's fundamentally a lie, because it was essentially more profitable and faster path to more equity value to not have safety. Because every
Mhm.
time, I mean, if it was an automobile industry, every time a car crash happened, there was never a seatbelt law. And due to that, there was no liability. And so, okay, we feel terrible. Like, stand up and apologize to the parents. Not that you actually did anything wrong, but as we remember the apology, the non-apology apology. Like, we're sorry this
Yes.
happened to you.
From
No, we
Zuckerberg.
didn't do it.
Mhm.
No, actually, you did do it. But sorry it happened to you. And yeah, I don't know. I get worked up, as you know. I spend a lot of time alongside of you all fighting for these things.
Mhm.
And I think we're so close to that kind of breakthrough in the society, and whether it comes through law, through courts, through a societal shift, we have to be fighting for change on all fronts.
Yes.
And
Yes. And I
AngelQ's
think
role in that
Mhm.
is giving a tool to parents so that on their home front, they have something now. If it takes us another 2 years to get the law, or another 9 months, or 4 years, or it takes another 2 years for certain cases to grind through to create consent decrees where these guys actually have to have safety, like, let's
Mhm.
do something now that solves a lot of the problem.
Yes, exactly. And I think it all pushes towards that cultural social tipping point that I agree with you. I do think it's coming. I think, as you were referencing Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which has been giving so many of these online platforms broad immunity for even when
Mm-hmm.
they knowingly, recklessly, negligently facilitate sexual abuse and exploitation. I do believe we're going to see great progress in that area. But like you said, parents can't wait. They have a child right
No.
now who has a homework project, and what's the parent supposed to do? And in that moment, is their child at such risk of becoming one of those plaintiffs in a lawsuit? Parents should not have to wait for the courts to figure it out, to have some solutions in front of them. And so that's where I do think having the private sector be able to respond and offer something that's
Mm-hmm.
positive is so important. And something else that I really like about Angel Q is that it's not just reactive. So many
Mm-hmm.
tools, and even good tools, but are very reactive. After you detect harmful content, you detect after your child has been contacted, you detect after your child has seen something that could be really damaging to them. But instead, this is creating a safe space for them to engage and be curious, which is just so refreshing. I'm no longer so scared about my daughter going online to want to look up how to make slime or something like that, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
That's right. No, it's funny the questions they ask. I mean, I think it was the Nyla Anderson story that, I mean, any solution we wanted to build had to preempt the harms, not react to them.
Mm,
And we
mhm.
designed this to sit between the child and those things, so nothing could get through to them.
Mhm.
That was the goal. And we hopefully have made pretty good strides to that goal. We're going to have to constantly expand like what Angel is able to go engage with and read, and the sources of content. And that will keep an ongoing challenge for us to make the AI smart enough to spot issues in that content. But we'll do it starting from, is it essentially absolutely safe? Is it, so it's like right now we've got a subset of the internet that we think is nearly absolutely safe. When we have little exceptions, I mean, the number of like concerns about, Angel brought back this images that was a little off. Like we've watched that kind of stuff in the last year and a half of beta development drop to practically nothing. And that's kind of
Wow.
when we know that we're pretty far in the journey. Now we're hopefully going to be scaling up to a lot more users, and so we know that with that many questions being asked, stuff's going to still probably come up that we didn't think of because we're not perfect. But know that surface it, and the turnaround on that, we'll view it as mission critical, and we always have.
Mhm.
And so I think that starting from near absolute safety to the degree it can be assured, and then while maintaining that standard, take on more and more and more of the internet, so the kid doesn't feel like they're being denied like the broader
Mhm.
capabilities. There isn't this forbidden fruit they're kind of pulled toward, right? Every
Yeah.
bit of fruit we can intermediate is less temptation, and so
And
that's kind of where Angel comes in as well.
And that I was wanting to ask you about this because so obviously this is starting as kind of a safer browser, a safe browser. People can explore, they can learn, but and you hinted at it a bit earlier. What is this vision that you see? Because so this just recently launched. Obviously, you're growing, you're scaling right now, but there's so much potential with this concept of the right incentives, prioritizing child safety while honoring kids' curiosity. Um, I mean, do you think that this could be even a path for a whole different kind of kid native internet ecosystem in the future
Yeah.
as you continue to grow?
Well, so I think what we're doing is the whole internet, I think, is going to move toward being AI intermediated. Like, I think this age of
Mm,
25 years where we've been connected up to the internet and our attention has essentially been sucked like a vampire, like to monetize it. I think that's coming to an end. I really believe that. I think that, and
mm,
I know this because most very well enabled professionals that are leveraging AI right now, like, we don't Google search anymore. Think about
yeah,
that. Like that's the leading like landing page of the internet, and we're not going there anymore. Um,
yeah,
that is a giant sign that behavior is changing to say, you know what? I'm not going to sacrifice all this time in something inefficient so you can monetize me. I'm going to let my little agent go do that for me, and I get what I need, and I actually create a lot more that way, and I get time back. It's what technology
mhm,
is supposed to be. Technology is supposed to make us more productive. And you could argue pretty strongly in the last decade, it's made us less productive,
yeah,
that it's given us more potential and less productivity, more
mm,
selection, because the model that it was serving was to keep us choosing shelf by shelf, aisle by aisle, and never leave the supermarket.
yeah,
And I think that we're, once you have someone that can do the shopping for you, like how much do you really want to go to the supermarket the same way? Right? And
never. I
so
hate
that's
that.
what's going
I
on.
hate the
I
supermarket.
mean, that's what's going on. I mean, occasionally I
Yeah.
find it interesting, but like I don't go there like multiple times a week, even though I need stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that's the analogy is we're starting to realize that the systems that are in place today, the leaders have made stuff radically unproductive because they monetize the unproductivity. And
Hmm.
now here comes something that is going to be productive. Now, we're going to teach children in partnership with the parents that that's how they should see technology as something that goes and does what it's asked, comes back with something of high quality and standards where there's not like, I mean, the same kind of risk of overexposure. And when it brings it back and you consume it, you're done. And if you want to go do another one, but it's always intentional. And
Mm,
so that's a change in behavior that we're accomplishing through the change in design. And I think that carries forward where let's say you have someone in Angel and they grow up, they go to 12, and Angel's really meant for 12 and below. We'll have a version at some point which goes on with that kid, probably like their co-pilot. Okay.
mm,
Whether or not it will sit between them and all of the internet or not, we'll have to see. The technology might be possible to do that. I can foresee it. The only question is, is it really comprehensive enough? Is it scalable enough? Is it efficient enough? I think the answer to those questions will be yes, but you have to check back in about a year, and I'll be able to say, yeah, this is how we're building that. But that's our intent, is to actually grow up with the kid, and then start to give them, zones of autonomy while having their
Mm.
internet experience have clear boundaries of safety, and that lets them build their own identity, lets them kind of explore. And there's work we have to do before going into that market, especially with like child psychologists and others that we similarly we engage for the younger kids to build AngelQ. Um, and I think ultimately, that kid goes from 17 to 18 and they're a legal adult. And at that point, the AI doesn't function at all as a control tool of the parents because they're adults. Instead, it's like this. I don't want to say the word friend because this thing is just an AI. It's not there as as a person, but it's something that has learned to be extremely useful to them over many years, and it has been programmed to have their wellness like at heart, like at the
Mm.
center of what it is. Its objective function is not attention, it's not engagement, it's the wellness of that kid now turned
Wow.
to an adult. And I think you carry that angel with you, into the rest of your life, and that AI becomes something that has a unique place of trust. And our goal at AngelQ is to be that sort of platform, that AI platform for the next generation, founded in trust and safety.
Wow. Well, Tim Estes, I'm just so grateful for everything that you're doing. Like I said, I've said multiple times, it's just a breath of fresh air. It's so encouraging that amid all of these scary things happening in the AI space, that there's people like you who are building it for good. And I just want you to shout out, like, where should people go? How should they follow? How do they engage with Angel Q?
So I'm happy to announce that AngelQ is actually up on the App Store,
Woohoo.
and people can pull it down today. And that we're working with Nkosi to provide like a really special plan with a lot of free access for a strong window of time, so that families can get equipped with this very quickly and soon. I would ask, try it. If you like it, share it. One of the key parts of that parenting together, that sort of partnership with the parents, is we know that technology standards, like basically healthy technology behaviors, they're so much easier if you're in kind of a group or a pod, a set of friends that kind of have similar views or at
Mm.
least similar safety bounds. Like if one kid of 10 kids that they hang out with has really liberal views on technology usage and they're getting overexposed, that will tend to leak back to the whole set of kids that know them, and that'll become the stuff that they demand that they're not getting. And as parents, of course, we just should say no, right? So it's
Yeah.
not saying that, oh, we got to give into that, but think about the effect we could have if you can share that across these groups, these parents, of the peers of your children. Then AngelQ, what it becomes is, it becomes, oh wow, okay, so and so your son has an AI. My son probably wants an AI, and then the parent says, well, yeah, I guess that's okay. Well, do you realize that it keeps them safe from this? Oh, I didn't know that. and
Mm.
and I think that kind of conversation, that kind of viral parent conversation, that's what we want to play out, because what'll happen is, just like people going and buying the Anxious Generation and knowing the four, kind of policy proposals, the principles that John Haidt puts out, and that becoming mainstream as like a key grounding. The idea that the children below the age of 12 should not be on the naked internet, but should be intermediated with something else, like that would become a
Yeah.
standard practice. That would become,
Yes.
and that something else, it could be both a tool like a bark that's sort of restricting certain pieces, or it can be, simply like Angel that's able to intermediate all that kind of engagement interaction. And so it could be both, it could be either. And that our goal is that, the 55 million kids in the US that are between the ages of 5 and 18, approximately, that right now we estimate that less than 10% of those actually have some type of safety tool overlaying their internet engagement.
Mm. Mm.
And our goal is going to be to make it a majority. And in so doing, like protect their childhood as they're growing up, and that they stop growing up too fast because of
Mhm.
essentially the door being left open to something terrible.
Mm. Mhm. Well, that's I love that vision, and what a change that would have in so many ways for society, for the majority of children in America to have a safer online place to go is just that is going to change a generation, and prevent so many harmful things. So,
Mm-hmm.
MSCs, thank you so much for joining us, and everyone go to your app store, download AngelQ. Thank you so much, Tim. We'll have to have you back on again soon. Next year, once you figure
Absolutely.
out how to fix the whole internet for us, we'll give you a
Yeah,
year.
we figure out the teen situation. We got a lot of
Yeah.
work to do, and right now we've got millions of young kids to go get in front of and protect them before they are overexposed. So we're on that mission, and hopefully we do well enough in that to get a chance to prove out the next mission.
Yes, I'm sure you will. Thank you so much.